Hey, APC. I'm Neil Carlson, founder and principal consultant at DataWise Consulting, and like my colleague on screen, longtime frequent flyer with KConnect, including the Data and Capacity Work Group. Jeff?
Hi, everyone. Jeff Williams, Director of the Community Data and Research Lab at the Johnson Center. Pleased to be with you.
We are here to talk to you today about an idea that's been around KConnect for quite a while, that is the Community Data Trust. And this is collecting and organizing and analyzing data for collective impact efforts, organizing that through collective impact methods. So an important thing for you to recognize about the idea of the Community Data Trust is it's more about the trust than it is about the data. And we have to credit our friend Mark Woltman for coining that short, pithy observation. The CDT, Community Data Trust, is voluntary and membership-based. It would help set standards for exchanging and using information. It would train and develop network talent, and it would provide legal and technical support through work groups organized much like the ones you're familiar with KConnect. Some things that the CDT is not, it's not a master single database host for community data, though it could advise and support things like Jeff's and CDRL's Community Insights and other hubs. So there's a connection. It's not a central authority demanding compliance from everyone. Just like KConnect, it's an opportunity to coordinate efforts to figure out what we want to audit ourselves together for doing. And it's certainly not a vehicle for commercial interests, including DataWise. That's why we just founded a foundation so that we can potentially put it at the service of projects like this one. You may remember, those of you who've been around for a while, that this was originally presented as the big idea at APC's May 2017 meeting over at, actually, I think we're looking at the GVSU Eberhard Center here, actually. And the timeline, so we presented, there's a white paper that any of you who are interested in can find. In fact, we'll make sure that when you see this video, you can get that link in the chat. Then in 2020, some new life was breathed in when Wendy Randall and company at ENTF created the data analyst position that our friend Emily Madsen occupied. And the Johnson Center began overhauling the Community Insights product. In 2021, Janine O'Donnell and friends at the health department began convening monthly meetings because we could see the value in doing this that many of us have been attending. We'll tell you who they are in a minute. And then this year, we're participating in this gallery walk today, and we're going to take steps toward formal organization and rolling out some initial work groups. So that is the plan. Some benefits of the CDT, again, it's getting data for collective impact through the methods of collective impact that we all know solve certain problems, especially wicked problems. So the more collaborative and difficult it is to solve, the more sense it makes to create this organization to help solve the problem. As Jeff will discuss in more detail in a minute, for example, we would hope that legal agreements would get simpler, faster, cheaper, and better. Risk assessments could be shared among partners. The cost of data access should gradually fall, and the common knowledge base of solving technical, legal, collaborative problems should grow. Some prospective CDT work groups would be audit, to have people come together to collaborate to make sure that all of the data feeds in a particular network meet the requirements of that network. Legal, as I said, Jeff was going to speak to that in a moment. Setting data standards for protocols for interoperability between machine to machine and team to team data exchanges. Tech support for system integration work. And though the CDT shouldn't be an owner of heavy duty data systems and software, there may be some opportunity to develop some open source tools for helping coordinate portals and collaboratives and things like that, although that's probably one of the longest range and slowest moving targets. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to talk about the challenges of creating data agreements.
Thanks, Neil. So one of the challenges right now that Neil deals with in his current world, Neil has dealt with in his prior life, we deal with every day at the Johnson Center, is when we, as people that analyze data, go to obtain data, that acquisition, it's typically a one-by-one scenario, meaning we have to go to an individual provider and we write one data sharing agreement that's very particular to that specific piece of data, that specific timeline, those specific rules of engagements. And when I go to the very next provider, so think if I go to school district number 1 and get student data, when I go to school district number 2, it's like I never talked to school district number 1. It's a completely separate negotiation, a completely different data sharing agreement, everyone with their own nuances. And if use an example, a real world example right now, Neil's group is working along with the Johnson Center and many other community partners in Kent County on the Promised Neighborhoods Grant in southeast and southern city of Grand Rapids. That is a complex web of data sharing agreements between the different providers that have to be negotiated basically one by one. So that's kind of the world we're in, where it's very retail. It's very kind of relationship based. And as attorneys change, as CEOs change, as data analysts change, that kind of framework and kind of those relationships and honestly those negotiations in some ways kind of start back at square one, and then we work through it again at every renewal. So that's kind of the problem we're trying to solve. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about kind of what that solution is. And that is, think of a world where a number of different parties basically already agreed to kind of the rules of engagement. So this is, and I want to be particular, like Neil said at the beginning, there's some things that the data trust is, and there's some things that the data trust is not. The data trust is not this master database where as soon as you sign an agreement, you get access to the keys to the kingdom. Every individual provider is still in charge of their own data. That does not change at all with the trust. What it does mean, though, is when I go to school district number 7, if they were participating in the community data trust, we'd already would have agreed on what the terms of engagements are. So I could go there and think of it more like a template or literally a legal Zoom form where we've already agreed to the terms and conditions. I'm now saying, hi, I'm here from the Johnson Center. We'd like this data. And we agree to abide by the terms and conditions of Community Data Trust, version January 2023. When Neil shows up 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 quarters later, he says, oh yeah, I've also agreed to abide by the terms of the Community Data Trust, and it speeds that conversation along. So think of this more of a template agreement where we've already talked about those rules of engagement. We've already talked about the data standards. We've already talked about data privacy, and we're kind of just endorsing that, yep, we're going to follow those already pre-agreed standards across. So it's kind of, the word standards in the technical field means a very particular thing. So we're using that here in the more generic plain English language, or an English meaning, that it's an agreed upon set of rules that we can collectively use to move data more quickly between organizations. And again, I want to repeat here, that have a need to know, that are appropriately engaged in things. This is not a big data warehouse where you can simply, get anything in there. It's a framework for agreements between organizations. As we've talked about this, Neil mentioned those meetings every month, every couple of months that the health department has really helped organize. Just want to show you here are a number of organizations that kind of, as they heard about this, kind of perked up their ears and said, yeah, this sounds really good. Let's keep talking. So I want to be clear too, that this is not a list of, say, endorsers of this in terms of we've signed, but this is a list of birds of a feather who have said, boy, there's something here in this idea, and we'd really like to see if we can help this take shape over the next year or two. So HealthNet West Michigan, Kent County Health Department, ENTF, KConnect, Johnson Center, and DataWise. We've been talking to a number of other organizations as well that, again, kind of nod their head and say, yeah, that would be great. We're really focusing this right now when we talk about what kinds of data. It's really starting in kind of the education, health, community indicator, that kind of environment is where we're talking about starting this. But there's really kind of no limit to how far this can go. What we're really trying to do is, again, try to make it easier for folks in Kent County to obtain and share data about Kent County residents, kind of what's going on, with a common set of standards and a common framework. So with that, Neil, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Nailed it. So you may be asking yourself now, what can I do? Well, here's what you can do. You would be welcome at existing monthly meetings. There, contact Janine O'Donnell, whose email address is on the screen, to get an invitation. Many thanks to Janine for being our kind of inaugural informal chair. She's doing a great job. If you'd like to nominate yourself or refer someone else to join a prospective CDT work group, contact me, and my email address is on the screen. We're looking for project leads and data analysts from data-intensive coalitions and networks. There might be representatives from existing KConnect work groups that would belong in this conversation that have interest in the technical and data exchange challenges. We really think that the Community Data Trust needs to have strong higher ed representation, so that's a group we're interested in. Any data system administrators, designers, and developers, including those who would be maybe donating their time while their main job is with an enterprise that has the scale that we need to learn from. Cybersecurity and compliance experts, and of course, attorneys with data sharing and data systems experience. And of course, if you're a nonprofit or foundation leadership that would be willing to help advise us or work with us to set up the formal organization, eager to hear from you. With that, we look forward to being available to answer your questions and talk about this after APC or at some future time. Thank you.